All right, here we go. Leaked audio of Iran's foreign minister leading to calls for John Kerry to resign. Javad Zarif reportedly said, quote, "It was former U.S. Foreign Secretary John Kerry, we call him Secretary of State, who told me Israel had launched more than 200 attacks on Iranian forces in Syria." Evidently, he was surprised by this. But the former Secretary of State denies the claim, tweeting this, "I can tell you that this story and these allegations are unequivocally false. This never happened, either when I was Secretary of State or since." Here to react, former State Department spokesperson for the Trump administration, Morgan Ortagus. Morgan Ortagus, the problem with his denial is that he has a habit of lying. Like, for example, showing up at different State Department events when he wasn't in office. And in the past said he was not meeting with Zarif when pictures of him meeting with Zarif surfaced, correct?
Well, you know, when you said he has a pattern of lying, I wasn't sure if you were talking about Zarif or Kerry. Zarif is obviously their chief propagandist. And here's the problem with the relationship between John Kerry and the Iranians. Number one, Joe Biden did an interview with PBS a few years ago where he talked about the fact that John Kerry and Zarif used to talk to each other on John Kerry's cell phone. There's a lot of problems with that. When I worked for Secretary Pompeo, for example, you always go through the State Department Operations Center for calls between foreign ministers, between leaders, so that way there is a transcript, people know what's being said. So Joe Biden, number one, has already admitted that John Kerry makes personal cell phone calls to Zarif. Number two, as you pointed out, John Kerry had a pattern, a history of meeting with Zarif at a minimum, maybe other Iranian leaders during the Trump administration. That brings up Logan Act questions, that just brings up a lot of issues about undermining the current, administration. So no one has any, State Department officials have no record of what was said in between John Kerry and Zarif when they have private meetings during the Trump administration. And so you have to look at this pattern of behavior of supporting the Iranians. And what's key here, Brian, is that John Kerry also has a pattern of undermining Israel. So whether he's sharing classified intelligence reportedly, even though he's denying it, with the Iranians, either the New York Times is wrong or Zarif is lying or John Kerry is lying. So whether he's sharing that sort of intelligence on Israel with the Iranians, or reportedly also at the end of the Obama administration, John Kerry is the one who encouraged the Palestinians to pursue a vote at the UN against the Israelis, in which the United States for the first time abstained. So there's something, I can't figure it out, Brian. There's some very, very odd pattern of behavior where John Kerry seems to be beholden to the Iranians and right, works at every inch he can against Israel.
Yeah, against Israel and maybe against us in the previous administration, which you were a part of. A previous reported on Fox News, Kerry has met two other times with the Iranians, and Donald Trump has says to undermine their operations and to put maximum pressure on Iran. Think about this. If you're Israel today, I'm wondering what you think about America and their goals in Vienna when it comes to cutting back to a deal that was back in 2015 wasn't popular in America. Now it's almost expired, and we're begging to get back into it. Why our destroyers are being harassed again in the Persian Gulf. Do you believe that John Kerry would have done something like that if this proves true without Barack Obama knowing it?
You're referring to his meeting with the Iranians during... The problem with the ongoing meetings right now in Vienna is that Iran has done nothing to curb their illicit behavior. They've done nothing, no sort of gestures of goodwill to come to the table. In fact, just the opposite. They're saying that they're not going to negotiate until all U.S. sanctions are released. So listen, I understand diplomacy. I understand trying to get to peace. During the Trump administration, and you hit us for it sometimes, Brian, we were negotiating at the State Department with the Taliban to try to get to peace in Afghanistan. That was controversial. That was difficult. We were trying to end a war. So I'm not arguing that we should never have peaceful negotiations. But what you have to say is the other party willing to change their behavior? Are they willing to stop funding terrorism? Are they willing to stop building ballistic missiles and pursuing a nuclear weapons program? And you've got a regime in Iran that is not making any actions, any gestures of goodwill. They're not repenting for their ways. And they're simply demanding that Americans release all sanctions. By the way, some of these sanctions have nothing to do with their nuclear program. They're related to terrorism. They're related to human rights. They're related to meddling in U.S. 2020 elections. We'll see what happens. We'll see if this administration toes the line. But I don't know what's in it for us. What are the Iranians doing to make the world, the Middle East, a better and safer place?
Yeah, and I'm just wondering, we don't even need a climate czar. He has a position that never existed before. But if he wanted to have an ounce of integrity, he would just leave with his tail between his legs and call it a day. Morgan Ortagus, thanks so much.
Thanks, Brian.